Let me introduce you to the airbrush. This is a dual action. This is the one that I prefer, especially if you're going to be serious in airbrushing. Dual action means that everything is controlled by the trigger. By pressing down, you get the air. By pulling back, you allow the amount of paint to come into it and to paint with. This one here is a siphon feed. There's the cup here where the paint is, and it comes up from the bottom versus a gravity feed where it sits on the top. You want to become comfortable with the airbrush, and the way you hold it really gives you a lot of freedom, and also allows your hand to not cramp up as often. Okay, one of the things you have to remember with airbrushing is that if you have a clean tool, you'll have more success. If it's dirty, it'll clog and it'll spatter and you'll have problems. So make sure you run water through your airbrush and make sure that you clean it between each colors. All right, I got some white in here right now. And so I'm going to take the majority of the paint out, and then I'm just going to push water in here, and then I'm going to put water into the cup, press down, and pull back, and that's what that's doing, is blowing paint back through the cup and cleaning the chamber inside. And you want to keep doing that until it comes out clear. It may take 2 or 3 times. You want to make sure that that completely is clean of paint. Okay? And there you go. Okay, we're going to take apart the airbrush because sometimes the cleaning requires us to take it apart. And first you want to take the cup off if this is a siphon feed. You put that there. And you want to put your parts in a row until you become familiar with it. So this is the handle barrel. Here's your needle. Lock nut, barrel assembly, spring, lever piston, trigger, lever glide, nozzle assembly. Now, this very last part right here is screwed on tight. You want to be very careful when you take this off. Not all airbrushes have them, but Iawatas do, and certain Badgers as well. You want to make sure that you use the wrench that is supplied because it won't put any undue torque on it and break it. So you're going to be able to take this and unscrew this tip off. This is very delicate. And if you bend it, it's an expensive part to replace. Okay, now this is the basic barrel of the body. You want to undo this, and then you can take this and soak this in one of those solvents or cleaners that they have. Badger makes them. Various companies make airbrush solvent cleaners. If you don't have that, you could also take some ammonia and dilute a little bit of it in water and let that soak in the ammonia, and it'll loosen up the paint as well. All right. So once you've done that, you want to be able to put this all back together again. In cleaning it, you'll find that your needle is going to have a little bit of residue of paint on it. If you have some fine steel wool, you can run that through and just take the rest of that paint right off. Be very gentle with it because you don't want to bend the tip of your needle at all. Now, I'll show you how to fix the needle later on in the series if it is slightly bent. Okay? Now, also, paint's going to build up in this little tiny nozzle. And so what I'll do sometimes is I'll just very gently put the needle back in and run it up and down a little bit like this, and that's going to start to scrape off with the tip some of the paint that's been built up inside there. Well, be very careful because it's awful pointed. And once I've done that, it's the first part that goes back on the barrel. Run the barrel through some water, get it nice and clean, and then carefully screw it back on. Don't want to cross thread it. fact, it's easier if you have a pair of tweezers. All right, so we want to put it back on in the order after we've cleaned them. Make sure each one of the parts is free of any of the paint residue. Sometimes you have to scrape it a little bit with your finger. This orifice right here is very important because this is the part that allows the air to go past the nozzle so that the paint can come through. So we make sure that that's nice and reamed out. Put this back on like this. Hand snug. You can use a stiff toothbrush to scrub some of this off, and as well as some of that soft still wool. Get it nice and clean. And then you put the trigger assembly back in. What you do is this is kind of tricky because this has got to go into a little tiny hole inside the barrel. And it doesn't like sitting still. It likes flopping back and forth. So if I'm having problems with it, you're going to have problems with it. There you go. Okay? Hear that? It's in there. This part here, it's curved. Curved is pointed towards the back end of the airbrush. So you put it in sideways and flip it around and promptly screw up. Let's start over here. Sometimes it's nice to have something to grab a hold of it like this. That way you can put it in sideways. Well, let's put it like this way. Put it in sideways like this and then twist it so that the round part is pointed back. Okay? Next part that goes on is this. There's a slot that fits inside of it. And you can push that right up against it like that. Then goes the spring that gives the trigger its pull. And you put on the barrel assembly, and you'll want to make sure that you bring it down to where it just snugs up tight. Don't use pairs of pliers. Okay, next thing that goes on is the needle. Carefully thread it through until it sits where it's supposed to. And then you put the lock nut on. And you're ready to rock and roll. There you go.